The warning it all started with an ancient message, one that had been sent long ago. Buried beneath layers of time, the Galactic Council had long since forgotten the warnings that came from the alien races who had once called Earth their ally. The universe, vast and full of dangers, had always had a fragile peace. But this peace was fragile for a reason. The Council had once made a pact with the people of Earth. But as time passed, humanity's importance seemed to fade from memory. Earth, once a world of promise, was now seen by most as a forgotten relic. A small blue dot lost in the infinite cosmos. But some forces never forget. And the aliens who had once walked among humanity's ancestors knew better. Commander Callan stood in the command center of the Empire's flagship, his expression grim as he reviewed the message that had just been transmitted across the galaxy. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The message had been encoded, not in the standard galactic language, but in a symbolic form that took weeks to decode. It wasn't a warning from the Galactic Council, it was a message from something far older. Something more ancient. The message spoke of a trap, a warning to never enter Earth's orbit, to never approach the planet. It spoke of an ancient civilization that had once tried to contain a force so powerful it could rewrite the very fabric of the universe. It's a trap, Callan muttered under his breath, still in disbelief. The message was clear, its meaning undeniable. Earth, a seemingly insignificant world, was the gateway to something far more dangerous than they could have ever anticipated. General Lyra, the Empire's chief military strategist, stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the holographic map of Earth. Do you think this message is real? She asked, her tone calm, but there was a trace of unease in her eyes. The Council has never considered Earth to be anything more than a dead planet. Callan didn't answer immediately. His mind raced through the possibilities. If the message was true, then they were on the edge of something catastrophic. They had heard the rumors of alien races warning about Earth, but those were always written off as mere superstitions. But now, staring at the decoded message, he couldn't ignore the chill running down his spine. The message wasn't just a warning about Earth, it was a warning about something far more dangerous. Something that had been waiting for centuries. Humanity had been forgotten, but what if they had been forgotten for a reason? We need to investigate, Callan finally said, his voice steady but filled with authority. We need to know why Earth is considered a threat. Maya Reed, a top scientist with the Empire, stood beside the commander, her face pale as she read through the ancient message herself. This is no ordinary warning, she said, her voice low, almost as if she was speaking to herself. These ancient races knew something about Earth that we never understood. The force they spoke of, it's real. The force mentioned in the message was something that had been sealed away. Long before the Empire's rise to power, humanity had unknowingly been a part of something greater. Something that was now beginning to reawaken. The message spoke of chaos, of a cosmic entity that had been bound to Earth for millennia. The ancient races had feared it, and they had sealed it away, burying it beneath the Earth's surface. What if the Council's peace is a lie? Maya asked, her eyes narrowing. What if the trap isn't just about Earth? What if it's about us, about everything we've built? Callan looked at her, his mind reeling from the implications. If the galactic peace was based on something this dangerous, then we've been living in ignorance. And now, this message is an invitation to open that door. As the team discussed the ancient message, they received reports from other parts of the fleet. The Empire was moving toward Earth as it had planned for months. But now the question was whether they were walking into a trap. The warning from the ancient aliens could not be dismissed. Every piece of information suggested that Earth was not the quiet planet it seemed to be. It was hiding secrets, and those secrets had the potential to unravel the entire galaxy. The moment of truth was drawing closer. The Empire's fleet was nearing Earth's orbit, and the team had little time to prepare. Callan turned to Maya and General Lyra, his expression unwavering. We can't ignore the warning. If there is even a chance that Earth is a trap, then we need to be ready for anything. Maya nodded, her face set in determination. We'll find out what's buried there. But we must be cautious. We might not be the ones making the decisions this time. Asterisk into the TROPIST, the Empire's fleet continued its descent toward Earth. A strange unease settled over the commanders and crew. The warning had set the tone for everything that followed, and the knowledge that they were heading into an unknown trap made everyone on board uneasy. Commander Callan stood in the command center, his mind racing with thoughts of what awaited them. He had always believed that the Empire's strength was enough to conquer anything in its path. But now, doubt clouded his thoughts. Commander, we're approaching Earth's atmosphere, Lieutenant Cass said, her voice tinged with uncertainty. All systems are functioning, but there's something strange. The reading something is off with the planet's electromagnetic field. Callan's gaze narrowed as he looked at the data displayed before him. Earth was showing abnormal readings, unlike anything they had encountered before. The ship's instruments were picking up unpredictable fluctuations in the magnetic field, causing distortions in the sensors. It was almost as though the planet was resisting their presence. Prepare for descent. Callan ordered, his voice firm but with an edge of caution. We're going to land, but keep alert. This is no ordinary mission. As the Empire's fleet neared Earth, the massive ships entered the planet's orbit. They could see Earth below its blue oceans, white clouds, and the vast land masses that seemed peaceful from this distance. But something about the planet felt different. As they moved closer, the sky itself seemed to shimmer as if the atmosphere was thickening around them. The ships began to feel the pressure of an invisible force, and the closer they got, the more unsettling the sensation became. This doesn't feel right, General Lyra muttered. Gripping the edge of the command station, there's something in the air, something we're not seeing. Maya, who had been scanning the ship's ancient data, looked up from her console. It's not just the atmosphere, she said, her voice strained. There's energy radiating from the planet's surface. It's not natural, it's like the planet itself is alive. The moment they began their descent, the ship's instruments went haywire, alarms blared, and the once calm environment became filled with tension. Callan gripped the edge of the seat as the vessel shuddered under the strain of an invisible force. What's happening? He barked at the crew. We're losing control, Lieutenant Cash shouted. The ship's systems are fighting us. We can't get through the atmosphere, it's like the planet is rejecting us. Cut the engines. Callan ordered, we're going down whether the systems are with us or not. With a sudden jolt, the fleet broke through the atmosphere, landing with a heavy thud on Earth's surface. The ship screeched as they touched the ground, and the surrounding air seemed to grow even heavier, like the land itself was pressing down on them. The Empire's fleet had landed, but now the true nature of Earth's trap was beginning to show itself. The Empire's soldiers disembarked, weapons ready, and the human team that had accompanied them began to gather. Maya stepped off the ship, her senses on high alert. The ground beneath her feet felt solid, as if it was holding something. Beneath the surface, something ancient and waiting. The air smelled different, thick, stale, as if it had not been disturbed for centuries. The atmosphere was alive with energy. The team's scanners picked up anomalies in the environment, but nothing could explain what was happening. It was as if Earth itself was somehow resisting their presence, pushing back against their very existence. As the team moved deeper into the alien landscape, they found strange ruins scattered around the area, remnants of a long-forgotten civilization. Towering structures stood tall and decaying, their surfaces covered in moss and vines that seemed to move of their own accord. The alien language on the ruins was familiar, yet no one could translate it, not even Maya, despite her extensive research. What happened here? General Lyra asked, stepping forward to inspect the markings. It was a civilization, Maya said, but it's not human. This isn't even from the same species we encountered in our history. These people, they were not supposed to be on Earth. But even as she spoke, a sense of unease washed over her. The air grew thicker and a low hum began to vibrate beneath the ground. Something was waking up beneath their feet, a force that had been waiting for millions of years. The team continued to explore the area, uncovering more artifacts, but nothing could prepare them for what came next. Suddenly, the ground beneath them cracked and the very earth seemed to split open. A loud roar filled the air, like the sound of the planet coming to life. What the hell is that? One of the soldiers shouted, turning toward the kraken. The ground, something massive was rising from the depths. The earth trembled, and a dark figure began to emerge, its shape unclear, but its presence unnervingly familiar. The awakening force of the ground trembled underfoot as the ancient entity continued to rise. From the depths of the earth, the sound of rock and stone shifting filled the air, followed by a low, deep growl, like the planet itself was alive and angry. The air grew thick, as if the very atmosphere were charged with energy, and the team, standing frozen, could feel the weight of something immense stirring beneath them. Maya stood motionless, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and fascination. She had always suspected that there was something ancient beneath the surface of Earth, but this was beyond anything she could have ever imagined. What in the galaxy is that? Lieutenant Cass whispered, eyes wide with disbelief. It's not just a creature, Maya said, her voice trembling with the weight of the revelation. This isn't an animal or a simple life form. This is the reason the aliens warned us to stay away from Earth. This is what they feared. As the entity continued to rise, its massive form began to take shape, towering with an aura of dark energy. It seemed to be made of rock, metal, and something that shimmered like liquid metal. The ancient markings on the ship's walls suddenly began to glow brighter, and Maya could hear a faint whisper, as if the ship was communicating with the entity. It was as though the ship was recognizing it, awakening the dormant power that had been sealed for so long. The rest of the team stared in awe and fear as the entity's form grew clearer. It had multiple arms, each resembling tentacles made of rock and energy. Crackling with strange power, eyes formed on its massive head, glowing with an unnatural light, reflecting the distant stars in its depths. It wasn't just alien. It was older than the universe itself. It was the kind of being that could twist time, manipulate space, and devour entire civilizations. "We have to stop it," General Lyra shouted, but even as she spoke, the ground beneath them seemed to shift once more, the energy around them intensified, and their weapons felt powerless in comparison. Maya watched as the creature's eyes locked onto her. It knew her, just as it had known the human voice that had activated the ship. Her heart raced as she took a step forward, the alien force seeming to beckon her. The ship, still pulsing with light, responded to her presence. But it wasn't just responding to her. It was reacting to the entity, a force older than anything she had ever encountered. They were right, Maya whispered to herself, her hand hovering over the alien control panel. The message had been true. Earth had been a trap, and the alien race that had sealed away this entity had done so for a reason. They had been afraid of it, just as the Galactic Empire was about to experience. As the entity's form fully emerged from the Earth's surface, its power surged and the sky itself began to distort. Time seemed to slow, the very air shifting in response to the massive creature in that moment. It was clear, the entity was no mere adversary, it was cosmic in scale. A force that could warp reality itself, and it was now free. "Where to?" "Late," Cass muttered, his voice full of dread. "This isn't just a threat to Earth, this thing could destroy the entire galaxy." Maya felt the weight of his words, her hand still gripping the console. "We have to find a way to contain it, or we're all doomed." Suddenly, the ship's interior began to change, its walls glowing brighter. The ship's AI activated, its voice echoing throughout the room, initiating defense sequence. "What's happening?" Tariq, the leader of the Death Worlders, shouted. "Is the ship fighting back?" Maya's heart raced as she tried to decipher the data flooding the console. The ship's core is responding to the entity's presence. It's trying to create a force field, but it's failing. This entity is too powerful for the ship's defenses. As if in response to the ship's failed defense, the entity let out a terrifying roar that shook the very foundation of the planet. The ground cracked open further, revealing massive spider-like structures hidden beneath the surface part of the ancient network that had been built to contain the entity. The team was now caught in the middle of a battle between forces they could barely understand. Humanity, the Death Worlders, and the ship were no match for the cosmic entity that was now free to consume everything in its path. But something unexpected happened. The ship's AI, recognizing the cosmic threat, initiated a final failsafe. It linked with the ancient technology deep beneath Earth's surface, unleashing a burst of raw energy enough to hold back the entity for only a brief moment. Asterisk, the last defensive ground beneath their feet was shaking, and the air was filled with an eerie hum, a constant vibration that seemed to echo through the very bones of the Earth. The entity, now fully manifested, towered above them like a colossal force of nature, its presence so overwhelming that it seemed to distort the very fabric of reality. The sky above darkened, and the galaxy's balance seemed to teeter on the edge of oblivion. Maya felt her heart racing in her chest. Every instinct told her to run, to retreat back to the Empire's fleet and let the powers of the ship's ancient technology do its work. But deep down, she knew it was too late. The entity was already too powerful, its energy too overwhelming for any defensive measure to stop. Humanity had been asleep for far too long. Now it was time to wake up, to accept their place in the galaxy's grand design. "We're not going to survive this if we keep running," Maya said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "We need to use the ship, but not just for defense. We need to take the fight to it." General Lyra nodded, her face hard with determination. "We've been trained to face impossible odds. This is no different. We won't let this planet fall without a fight." But Tariq, the leader of the Death Worlders, looked up at the massive entity and shook his head. "This is no regular battle. We've faced impossible odds before. But this is beyond anything we've encountered. It's not just a force we're dealing with. It's the embodiment of chaos itself. It doesn't play by any rules. We don't have the luxury of fear." Maya snapped, her gaze fixed on the creature. "The ship is our only chance. We have to activate the core. It's the only way to tap into the power it holds." As the team scrambled to figure out how to operate the ship's powerful core, the ship began to respond to Maya's presence. The ancient controls began to hum again, and symbols along the walls of the ship's control room lit up like stars. In the sky, Maya's hands hovered over the console, as though the ship were calling her to activate its full potential. Suddenly, a voice rang out, a voice that echoed through the ship, a whisper from the past. "The path is open, but only one can walk it." Maya felt a sudden surge of energy. The ship, though ancient, was alive, and it was ready to reveal its secrets, but it came with a cost. Maya could feel the weight of the decision before her. The ship's power could be the key to defeating the entity, but using it would require a sacrifice. There was no turning back. "I'll do it," Maya said, stepping forward with resolve. "If this works, humanity will have a chance. If it doesn't, then we'll have given everything for the galaxy." As the core powered up, the ship's systems began to crackle with energy. The walls around them started to warp and pulse, and Maya could feel the ship's power flowing into her. Her body was connected to it, like a conduit for an immense force. The ground beneath her feet rumbled as the entity sensed the shift in energy. The battle had begun, and this time, humanity wasn't on the sidelines, but the entity was no mere opponent, it was ancient. Its presence seeped into the very fabric of space-time. It was time itself that it bent to its will, and it had already begun to unleash its power. Maya could feel the ship's essence coursing through her veins as the core activated. The walls around her shimmered, and for a brief moment, she felt as though she were standing in the heart of a cosmic storm. She closed her eyes, focusing on the flow of energy, and with a deep breath, she activated the ship's final defense. A blinding pulse of light shot through the ship, flooding the entire chamber with radiant energy. The entity's form began to flicker as though the force of the ship's power was tearing at its very existence. The ship's core was tapping into the entity's very nature, attempting to sever the connection between the being and the planet itself, but the entity fought back, its tendrils reaching out, trying to pull the energy back toward it. The ground shook again, and a wave of destruction pulsed from the entity, threatening to overwhelm the ship. The ship's systems screamed as they began to overload, pushing their limits. "It's too much," General Lyra shouted as she tried to steady herself. "We're not going to survive this unless we break through." But Maya was focused. Her connection to the ship was becoming more intense. The voice of the ship spoke once more, clearer this time, directly in her mind. "To defeat the entity, you must accept its power, become one with it. Only then will you be able to bend time to your will." The ship's voice felt both like a command and a warning. Maya knew the truth. If she wanted to defeat the entity, she had to embrace its power, use it against itself. It was the only way to ensure humanity's survival, but the cost was enormous. The rift between worlds. Maya felt the surge of power coursing through her like a raging storm. The ship's core had activated, and she was its conduit, connected directly to the entity itself. As her consciousness intertwined with the ship, time seemed to bend. Space warped around her, and for a fleeting moment, she could see through the very fabric of reality. Visions flooded her mind, glimpses of ancient wars, forgotten technologies, and an endless sea of stars stretching out before her. She was seeing the universe as it had once been, and as it could be again. But she wasn't alone in this journey. The entity, with its vast, immeasurable power, pushed back, trying to break the connection. Maya's mind strained against it, struggling to maintain control over the ship's immense power. Dark tendrils of energy reached for her, threatening to pull her into an endless void. It was as if the entity wanted to swallow her whole, to use her as the final piece in its endless cycle of destruction. "Maya," Jacob's voice cut through the chaos, filled with fear, "you can't keep this up much longer. The ship's core is overloading. If you don't stop now, it could tear apart the galaxy." But Maya didn't stop. She couldn't. The only way to save Earth, to save humanity, was to finish this, to defeat the entity that had been lurking beneath Earth for so long. She felt the ship's energy growing, feeding on the rising tension. It was giving her more power, but it was also hurting her, pulling her further into the abyss. The entity began to scream, its roar echoing through the ship. It was as if it was aware that its reign was nearing its end, and it fought desperately to maintain control. Dark lightning arced through the air, and the planet below seemed to tremble in response to the battle being waged between the ship's power and the entity's overwhelming force. Maya's vision blurred as she felt herself losing grip on the ship. The energy was too much for one person to control, especially when the entity was actively resisting it. The ship's ancient systems, powerful though they were straining under the pressure. The more Maya connected, the more she could feel the ship's sentience, its will to keep the entity contained. But at what cost? "Maya," General Lyra's voice came through, louder now, as if the pressure was affecting them all. "You're going to burn out if you don't stop." The rift hits opening. Maya's mind snapped back into focus. The rift, the gateway between worlds. The entity's power was trying to rip open a doorway, one that would allow it to escape the ship and return to the galaxy, devouring everything in its path. The rift wasn't just a physical gap, it was a tear in time and space, threatening to bring chaos to the entire universe. "I can't stop now," Maya whispered through gritted teeth, her voice shaking. "I'm the only one who can close the rift. The ship chose me for this." With all her strength, Maya focused, willing the ship's core to work with her. She reached deeper into the ship's power, letting it flow through her. The energy crackled around her as she bent time itself, trying to hold back the floodgate of destruction the entity sought to unleash. The entity screamed louder, feeling the ship's energy cutting into it, severing the connection between the rift and the galaxy. The rift began to close, but the resistance was overwhelming. It felt as if every ounce of energy was being drained from her, her consciousness slipping between time and space. No, not like this, not again. Maya pushed the thought aside. Focusing only on the task at hand, the ship's AI seemed to pulse with her, as if responding to her will. Together, they fought the entity not through force but through sheer determination. Suddenly, the ship's systems flickered and the energy flow stabilized. The rift closed with a deafening crack, as if the universe itself had been sealed shut. The power surged back into the ship and the entity began to shrink, its form dissolving into the void from which it came. The battle was over for now, but as the energy subsided, Maya collapsed to her knees. She felt exhausted. As if every ounce of her being had been drained, the ship's systems began to stabilize. But her vision remained blurred. The weight of what she had just done settled heavily on her shoulders. Maya, Jacob's voice called softly, pulling her back from the brink. You did it. The entity is gone. The rift is closed. Maya nodded. But the realization hit her hard. She had sacrificed herself to stop the entity. And while the immediate danger was over, the question remained, what was next for humanity? What would they do now that they had faced such an ancient and unimaginable threat? The aftermath ship's energy had settled into a soft hum, its systems stabilizing as the last remnants of the rift closed. The silence that followed was eerie, almost too quiet, like the calm before a storm. The team stood in the control room, their eyes still adjusting to the aftermath of the cataclysmic battle that had just unfolded. They had faced the impossible and survived, but the questions and consequences of their actions were far from over. Maya stood at the center of the control room, her breath heavy and uneven, her body exhausted from the monumental effort it took to seal the rift. She had saved them all, but at a personal cost. Every part of her body ached, every muscle sore, and her mind still buzzed with the echoes of the entity's presence. She had felt its power, had fought it, and yet she couldn't shake the sense that it hadn't truly been defeated. Is it over? Jacob asked, stepping forward. His voice was cautious, filled with concern. The entity is gone. Right, Maya shook her head slowly. It's gone, but its influence remains. The energy it left behind, it's still in the ship. We may have closed the rift, but we've only just begun to understand what we've unleashed. General Lyra crossed her arms, her gaze steely as she observed the ship's readouts. We've sealed the rift, but this is far from over. The Empire will want answers. The galaxy will want answers. What do we tell them? Maya's heart sank. The Empire, which had been on a path of conquest, might now see them as a threat, a force that had activated something ancient, something beyond their comprehension. Humanity's involvement in the ship's awakening could very well change the course of the galaxy's future, but not all answers were ready to be revealed. We don't have answers yet, Maya said, but we have something more important, a new understanding of who we are, of humanity's place in the cosmos. As the team sat down to discuss their next steps, a low hum echoed through the walls of the ship, growing louder by the second. The energy had not been fully dissipated. Maya's fingers hovered over the console, still connected to the ship's core systems. She could feel it. The power was still there, alive, as though the ship itself were waiting for them to make the next move. Suddenly, the ship's AI voice crackled to life, startling everyone in the room. New transmission received, unknown origin. The room fell silent. The ship had been dormant for centuries, hidden beneath Earth's surface, and now, after everything they had discovered, it was receiving a transmission. But from whom? Who's sending this transmission? Maya asked aloud, her voice tight with tension. The AI responded with a series of images, glowing symbols, and a distorted voice that seemed both alien and strangely familiar. Earth's guardians, Earth's power, it has been found. The words were cryptic, but Maya knew one thing: this was not the end. The entity might have been sealed away, but the guardians of Earth, whoever they were now reaching out. The message was clear: Earth had a greater purpose, and it was time for humanity to uncover it. Suspense. Maya's fingers flew over the control panel, trying to decode the message. What did it mean? The ship had been a prison, a weapon, and a key to something much larger than they had ever imagined. The Guardians, what was their role in all of this? Had they been watching humanity all along, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves? Or was there something worse still waiting to be unleashed? The team gathered around. The tension thick in the air. They had made it this far, but the discovery of the Guardians signified that their journey was far from over. The ship and the secrets it contained had only begun to reveal their true significance. It was as if Earth had always been a trap, a puzzle that was only now being solved. Maya stared at the holographic projection on the screen, trying to make sense of the cryptic Message, she could feel the weight of the ship's power pressing on her. But now, more than ever, she realized that humanity was not just surviving, they were awakening. We're on the edge of something much bigger than any of us, Maya said. More to herself than to the others, and we have to be ready for whatever comes next. The sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Tariq entered the room. His usual stern expression softened by a trace of uncertainty. The fleet is waiting for our orders. They want answers, Maya. The Empire will want to know everything we've discovered. Let them wait, Maya said firmly. What we've uncovered isn't for the Empire to control. Humanity has just unlocked something powerful, something that belongs to us. Then what do we do now? Jacob asked. Looking at the team. Maya stood tall, a sense of purpose settling over her. We prepare. Earth's guardians are awake, and we are the key to understanding their role. We can't let anyone misuse what we've uncovered. Humanity will no longer be at the mercy of the stars. It's our turn to shape the galaxy's future. As the team left the control room, Maya stood for a moment longer. The weight of the ship's power still thrumming through her. The rift had been sealed. But this was only the beginning. The true test was yet to come. How would humanity wield the power it had unlocked? The galaxy awaited, and Earth was no longer the forgotten planet it had once been. Humanity had the power, but how they used it would determine not just their future, but the destiny of all life in the galaxy. The Guardian's choice at Around. The primeval ship felt heavier than ever before. The team's recent discovery, the Guardian's transmission, had sent waves of uncertainty and awe through them. They had now been thrust into a position that none of them could have ever predicted. Humanity's awakening was no longer a distant hope, it was a reality. And it came with the weight of unimaginable responsibility. As Maya and the team processed the message, the ship seemed to react to their thoughts, its systems alive with the flow of energy. Each of them felt the presence of something greater, something watching them closely. The walls of the ship, once cold and silent, now hummed with an unspoken promise. The Guardians were waiting. And they weren't here just to observe, they were here to test humanity's resolve. Callan approached Maya, his expression tense. What if we're not ready for this? His voice was barely above a whisper, filled with doubt. We've uncovered the truth, but what if this power is too much for us to handle? What if we're waking something dangerous? Maya turned to him, her eyes hard but filled with resolve. The truth is, we don't have a choice, Callan. The Guardians are already here. Humanity is part of this. We've been given this power for a reason. We can't let fear control us now. And what if this power ends up controlling us? General Lyra asked, her voice filled with concern. We saw the destruction that the entity caused. Maya, this is beyond anything we've ever faced. The room fell silent as the weight of their situation settled over them. They were about to step into the unknown, armed with an ancient force that could either shape their destiny or tear the galaxy apart. The Guardians had chosen humanity. But why? What role did they play in this vast, cosmic game? Maya couldn't deny the fear. But her resolve was stronger. She had seen the future of humanity. In the ship's projections, they were no longer passive bystanders in the universe. Humanity had the potential to shape the very fabric of reality itself. And with that power came the obligation to protect it, not just from the Galactic Council, not just from the aliens, but from the temptation to abuse it. We have to make a choice, Maya said, her voice ringing with authority. We can't let this power consume us. We must use it for good, for the sake of every living being in the galaxy. The Guardians will test us, but they'll only trust us if we prove we can control what we've awakened. Just as she spoke, the ship's systems hummed louder, and the holographic map of the galaxy flickered to life. The Guardians were not just observing, they were guiding. Images of alien landscapes, ancient civilizations, and cosmic forces filled the screen. A new transmission crackled through the air. The voice was clearer this time, not a warning, but an invitation. The galaxy is in your hands, humanity. You've been given the key to the universe's true power, but be wary, for with great power comes great sacrifice. The Guardians will test you not just in battle, but in your heart. Will you rise to the challenge, or will you fall to the very forces you were meant to tame? The team gathered around the console, all eyes on the galactic map. They could see now that the Guardians weren't offering a simple choice. The path ahead was uncertain, and each decision they made would echo across the galaxy. They had the power to reshape the universe, to bring peace or to wage war. The weight of this realization hung heavily on them all. Jacob stepped forward, his voice steady but filled with emotion. We're at the threshold of something greater than we've ever imagined. Humanity's legacy is being rewritten, and we're the ones who must decide how it unfolds. As the team prepared to activate the ship's final sequences, the Guardians watched. Maya stood tall, her eyes determined. We're ready for whatever comes next. We've awakened this power, and now we will rise with it. The galaxy is ours to shape. The primeval fleet began to shift. aligning with the galaxy's pulse as the team prepared to lead humanity into the unknown. The choice they made would determine the future of every living being. In the universe, they weren't just playing a part in the galaxy's story, they were writing it.